The night was heavy with the scent of smoke, a cruel haze curling through the quiet neighborhood where the little French Bulldog, named Biscuit, lived with his owner, Clara. The once cozy home on Maple Street was now a beast of flame and shadow, its wooden frame groaning under the weight of an inferno that had sparked in the dead of night. From the street, the building was a terrifying spectacle. Orange tongues of fire licked at the windows, and thick, choking smoke billowed into the starry sky, blotting out the moon. Neighbors gathered, their faces pale in the flickering glow, whispering prayers and clutching their phones as sirens wailed in the distance. Inside, Biscuit was trapped. The small bat-eared dog, with his glossy black coat and soulful eyes, was somewhere in the heart of the blaze. Clara's heart pounded as she stood frozen for a moment, her bare feet cold against the pavement, her nightgown fluttering in the late autumn breeze. She had been jolted awake by the shrill scream of the smoke alarm, her instincts kicking in as she stumbled out of bed, coughing, eyes stinging. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Biscuit wasn't by her side. Her loyal companion, who slept curled at the foot of her bed every night, was still inside. Biscuit! Clara's voice broke as she screamed his name, the sound swallowed by the roar of the fire. Her neighbors tried to hold her back, their hands gentle but firm, urging her to wait for the firefighters. But Clara's world narrowed to one truth. Biscuit was family. She couldn't stand there helpless while he was in danger. Her mind raced, replaying memories of Biscuit's playful snorts, his waddling gait, the way he'd nudge her hand with his wrinkled muzzle when she was sad. She had to act. Clara tore free from the neighbor's grasp, her eyes scanning the house. The front door was a wall of flame, but the side window to the living room, where Biscuit loved to nap on the couch, might still be accessible. The glass was cracked, smoke seeping through, but the fire hadn't fully claimed that corner yet. Her pulse thundered in her ears as she grabbed a heavy garden stone from the yard, her hands trembling but resolute. With a cry, she smashed the window, the shards falling like brittle rain. Smoke poured out, stinging her lungs, but she didn't hesitate. She wrapped her nightgown around her hand, cleared the jagged edges, and climbed through, her bare feet crunching on broken glass. Inside, the heat was suffocating, a living thing that pressed against her skin. The living room was a maze of smoke and shadow, the familiar shapes of furniture distorted by the haze. "Biscuit, where are you, buddy?" Clara's voice was hoarse, her throat raw from the smoke. She dropped to her knees, crawling to stay. Below the thickest clouds, her hands groping blindly. The fire's roar was deafening, punctuated by the creak of weakening beams overhead. Every second felt like an eternity, each breath a gamble. Then a faint whimper cut through the chaos. Clara's heart leapt. It was Biscuit, his small, desperate cry coming from the corner near the couch. She crawled faster, ignoring the heat searing her palms, the sting of ash in her eyes. There he was, curled into a trembling ball beneath the coffee table, his black fur streaked with soot, his eyes wide with terror. "I've got you," Clara whispered, her voice cracking with relief as she scooped him into her arms. Biscuit's body was warm, his little frame shaking, but he was alive. Clara clutched him to her chest, his heartbeat thudding against her own. The fire was closing in, the flames now licking at the walls, the air growing hotter and thinner. She stumbled back toward the window, her lungs burning, her vision blurring. A loud crack split the air. A beam above gave way, crashing down just feet away, sending sparks flying. Clara ducked, shielding Biscuit with her body, her resolve hardening. They were getting out together, or not at all. With a final burst of strength, she reached the window, gasping as the cooler night air hit her face. Hands reached in from outside, neighbors now joined by a firefighter who had just arrived. "Pass him to me!" the firefighter shouted, his voice steady amidst the chaos. Clara kissed Biscuit's sooty forehead, whispering, "You're safe now," before gently handing him through the window. She followed, half climbing, half falling into the arms of those waiting outside. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Clara barely heard them. Her eyes were locked on Biscuit, now cradled by a neighbor, his tail giving a weak wag as he coughed as Clara collapsed onto the grass, oxygen mask pressed to her face by a paramedic. She reached for Biscuit, her fingers brushing his fur. Tears streamed down her cheeks, mixing with the grime on her skin. "We made it," she whispered, her voice raw but filled with love. The burning house loomed behind them, a reminder of how close they'd come to losing everything. But in that moment, with Biscuit safe in her arms, Clara knew no fire could break the bond they shared. The air was thick with the acrid sting of smoke. As Clara emerged from the inferno, her arms wrapped protectively around Biscuit, her French Bulldog. In that heart-stopping moment, the world seemed to pause, the flickering flames casting long shadows that danced across her soot-streaked face. Picture a close-up of Biscuit's face, his large expressive eyes wide with terror, their usual sparkle dulled by the ordeal. His black coat, normally glossy and smooth, was matted with ash, clinging to his trembling frame. His small, bat-like ears, which typically twitched with curiosity, lay flat against his head, a poignant symbol of his vulnerability. This image of Biscuit, helpless, fragile, utterly dependent, tugged at the heart, a reminder of how quickly safety could unravel into chaos. The scene was alive with tension, the fire's roar a monstrous growl that drowned out all else. Dramatic. Music would swell here, a surge of violins and deep pulsing drums building suspense like a tightening coil. The soundscape was a cacophony, the crackle of flames devouring wood, the groan of beams buckling under heat, the faint, frantic wail of sirens growing closer but still too far. Each note, each sound amplified the stakes, mirroring the frantic rhythm of Clara's pulse as she navigated the burning house. Yet amidst this chaos, her focus was razor-sharp, her world narrowed to one truth. Biscuit needed her. Clara's courage was not the stuff of storybooks, not a grand cinematic charge. It was raw, human, born of a love so deep it eclipsed fear. Imagine her crawling across the living room floor, the heat pressing against her like a physical weight, her nightgown singed at the edges, her palms stinging from the scorching floorboards. Her lungs burned with every shallow breath, her eyes watered from the smoke, but she pressed on, driven by the image of Biscuit's trusting gaze. The narration here would be stirring, its tone warm with admiration. In the heart of the fire, Clara found a strength she didn't know she had. Her love for Biscuit was a beacon, guiding her through the darkness, a force that no flame could consume. Her heroism was in the details, the way her trembling hands groped through the haze, the way her voice, hoarse and breaking, called Biscuit's name despite the smoke choking her throat. She wasn't thinking of glory or praise. She was thinking of the mornings when Biscuit would waddle to her bedside, snuffling and snorting, his stubby tail wagging like a metronome. She thought of the nights when he'd curl up against her, his warmth a quiet comfort after a long day. Those memories fueled her, gave her the strength to smash a window, to crawl through a house-turned hellscape, to ignore the fire's hungry roar at her back. The music would build to a crescendo as she found Biscuit, curled beneath the coffee table, his whimpers barely audible over the fire's fury. The moment she scooped him into her arms, his small body trembling against her chest, was a victory of the heart. But the danger wasn't over. The flames were closing in, licking at the walls, the air growing thinner with every passing second. A beam crashed behind her, sending sparks flying, and Clara ducked, shielding Biscuit with her body. Her resolve hardened. She would get them out no matter the cost. Clara's journey back to the window was a gauntlet of heat and smoke, each step a test of will. The music would pulse faster, a heartbeat of urgency. As she stumbled forward, Biscuit clutched tightly. The window loomed ahead, a fragile promise of salvation, its frame wreathed in smoke. She kissed Biscuit's sooty forehead, whispering, "We're almost there," her voice a thread of hope amidst the chaos. When she reached the window, passing Biscuit to the outstretched hands of a firefighter, the music would hit a single soaring note, a moment of triumph, fragile but undeniable. This was Clara's heroism, not a cape or a crown, but a woman in a tattered nightgown, risking everything for the creature she loved. She wasn't a soldier or a first responder, just a person whose heart refused to let go. Her story spoke to the quiet bravery that lives in us all, the kind that surfaces when someone we love is in danger. It was a testament to the bond between humans and their pets, a connection that transcends words, that makes the impossible feel within reach. Clara's courage was a light in the smoke, a reminder that love can be the strongest force of all, capable of defying even the fiercest flames. The fire had been subdued, but its shadow loomed large over Maple Street as dawn crept across the horizon. The pale grey light revealed a scene of stark devastation. Clara's home, once a warm haven filled with laughter and the patter of Biscuit's paws, was now a husk of its former self. Charred beams jutted like broken bones, windows lay in shattered heaps, and the roof sagged under the weight of collapse. Thin tendrils of smoke still curled upward, mingling with the morning mist, while the air hung heavy with the acrid bite of ash. The vibrant flower beds Clara had tended were trampled, the front yard strewn with debris, sodden books, melted plastic, fragments of a life now lost. Neighbors stood in quiet clusters, their faces drawn with a mix of relief and grief, their whispers barely audible over the distant hum of a fire truck's engine. Firefighters moved methodically, coiling hoses and inspecting the wreckage, their boots crunching on glass. The scene was a somber tableau, a testament to the fire's merciless hunger. Clara sat on the curb, a woolen blanket draped loosely over her shoulders, her nightgown tattered and streaked with soot. Her hands, bandaged from cuts and minor burns, rested gently on Biscuit, who was curled tightly in her lap. The French Bulldog's small frame still trembled faintly, his black fur cleaned of ash by a paramedic's careful hands, though his eyes, wide and soulful, carried the weight of the night's terror. His bat-like ears twitched at every sound, as if bracing for another threat. Clara's own face was a map of exhaustion, tear tracks cut through the grime on her cheeks, her lips chapped, her eyes red from smoke and crying. Yet there was a quiet strength in her posture, a defiance in the way she held Biscuit close, as if daring the world to take him from her again. The moment of their reunion was nothing short of miraculous, a beacon of light amidst the ruin. Picture it vividly. A firefighter, his helmet tucked under one arm, approaching Clara with Biscuit cradled carefully in his hands. The crowd parted, holding their breath as he knelt beside her. Clara's eyes widened, a sob catching in her throat. As she reached out, her bandaged fingers trembling, Biscuit, sensing her, let out a soft, plaintive whimper, his stubby tail giving a weak wag. The firefighter placed him in her arms, and Clara pulled him close, burying her face in his fur. "We're okay, buddy," she whispered, her voice cracking with raw emotion. Biscuit's tongue flicked out, licking her cheek, his warmth a lifeline in the cold dawn. The neighbors, some with tears streaming, others clutching each other's hands, erupted into soft applause. A collective exhale of relief. A few snapped photos. The images later shared across social media, capturing the raw, heart-wrenching beauty of their bond. Interviews with first responders added depth to the story, their voices grounding Clara's heroism in the gritty reality of the night. A veteran firefighter named Tom, his face weathered and streaked with soot, spoke to a local news crew, his tone heavy with admiration. "I've been on this job 20 years, seen all kinds of bravery," he said, pausing to clear his throat. But what Clara did, running into that house, no gear, no training, just to save her dog, that's something special. That house was a death trap, but she didn't flinch. His eyes, crinkled at the corners, softened as he glanced toward Clara and Biscuit. "She's a hero, plain and simple." A paramedic, Sarah, who'd treated Clara's injuries, chimed in, her voice tinged with awe. "When we got to her, she was coughing so hard she could barely speak, her hands cut up from the glass, burns on her arms. But all she kept asking was, 'Is Biscuit okay? Did you check him?' Sarah shook her head, a faint smile breaking through. "I've seen people panic in situations like that, but Clara, she was laser-focused on that dog. It's the kind of love that makes you believe in something bigger." Their words painted Clara not as a distant figure in a dramatic tale, but as a real woman, flawed and frightened, who'd summoned extraordinary courage for the sake of her companion. The aftermath was more than a catalogue of loss, though the losses were profound. Clara's home, where she'd hosted summer barbecues and decorated for every holiday, was uninhabitable. Her photo albums, her grandmother's quilt, the little ceramic bowl Biscuit ate from, all were gone, reduced to ash or warped beyond recognition. Yet, as Clara sat there, stroking Biscuit's back, her fingers tracing the familiar wrinkles of his skin. None of that seemed to matter. The camera would linger on them, capturing the quiet intimacy of their reunion. Clara's bandaged hands moving gently, Biscuit's head resting against her chest, his breathing steadying as he nestled closer. Their silence spoke volumes, louder than any words could. This was the heart of the story, not the fire's destruction but the love that endured, unyielding, unbreakable. The community around them rallied, their support a lifeline in the chaos. Neighbors brought blankets, coffee, and words of comfort, their gestures small but profound. A teenage girl from across the street, who'd often played fetch with Biscuit, knelt beside Clara, offering a timid smile. "He's so brave," she said, her voice shaky. "Just like you." The firefighter who'd carried Biscuit out lingered nearby, watching with a quiet pride, as if he too felt the weight of their victory. The scene was a mosaic of human connection, of strangers and friends bound by a shared moment of triumph over tragedy. Clara's gaze, though weary, held a flicker of resilience. She looked at the ruins of her home, then back at Biscuit, his warmth grounding her. The responder's praise, the neighbor's kindness, the simple act of holding her dog, it all wove together into a tapestry of hope. The fire had taken much, but it couldn't touch the bond that defined Clara and Biscuit. Their story was a reminder that even in the wake of loss, love could be a foundation to rebuild upon, a spark that no flame could extinguish. The days following, the fire were a blur of recovery and reflection for Clara and Biscuit, but their story was far from over. The charred remains of their home stood as a haunting reminder of the night that nearly tore them apart, yet it was in this aftermath that lessons of resilience began to take root. Picture the scene: a veterinary clinic, its sterile white walls, softened by posters of smiling pets. Biscuit, the French Bulldog whose bravery had matched his owner's, lay on an examination table, his black fur gleaming under the fluorescent lights. A veterinarian, her hands gentle but precise, checked his breathing, her stethoscope pressed against his small chest. The smoke inhalation had left Biscuit's lungs irritated, his cough a raspy echo of the ordeal, but he was healing. His soulful eyes, though still wary, flickered with the spark that had always defined him. The footage would capture his quiet strength, his tail giving a tentative wag, his head tilting as Clara's voice reached him from the corner of the room. This was Biscuit's recovery, a slow but steady reclaiming of life after trauma. Clara stood nearby, her bandaged hands clasped tightly, her face a mix of relief and lingering fear. The burns on her arms were healing, the cuts from the shattered window scabbing over, but the emotional wounds ran deeper. She watched Biscuit with a fierce tenderness, her heart swelling at every small sign of his progress. "The veterinarians." Voice was calm but firm as she spoke to Clara. "He's a fighter. With rest and care, he'll be back to his old self." Clara nodded, tears prickling her eyes. The camera would linger on this moment, Biscuit's steady breathing a counterpoint to Clara's quiet resolve, a testament to their shared survival. A touching interview with Clara brought the weight of the experience into sharp focus. Seated in a borrowed apartment, her temporary home, courtesy of a neighbor, she spoke softly, her voice raw with honesty. "I keep replaying that night," she said, her fingers tracing the edge of a coffee mug. "The smoke, the heat, the way I couldn't find him at first. I was so scared I'd lose him." She paused, her gaze drifting to Biscuit, who dozed on a blanket nearby, his snores a gentle rhythm. "But we got through it. He's my family, you know. I'd do it all again, no question." Her words carried a quiet power, a reflection not just on the fire, but on the fragility of life and the strength found in love. Clara's eyes brightened as she shifted to a practical note. "It's made me think about fire safety in a whole new way. I never had a real plan before. Smoke alarms, sure, but not a plan for getting us both out. I want people to know how important that is." Her words segued into a broader discussion as the narrative turned to experts in pet safety who underscored the critical need for preparedness. A fire safety specialist, Dr. Emily Torres, appeared on screen, her demeanor calm but urgent. Pets are family, but they're often overlooked in emergency plans, she explained, standing beside a mock-up of a home evacuation route. Every household should have a fire escape plan that includes pets, know where they sleep, have a designated carrier or leash ready, and practice getting out quickly. She gestured to a checklist projected behind her, working smoke alarms on every floor, clear escape routes, a pet emergency kit with food and medical records. Clara's story is inspiring, but it's also a wake-up call. Fires can happen to anyone, and seconds matter. Another expert, a veterinarian specializing in animal trauma, added depth to the conversation. Dr. Marcus Lee spoke from his clinic, surrounded by photos of rescued pets. Animals like Biscuit can suffer from smoke inhalation, burns, or stress after a fire, he said, but they're resilient. With prompt care, oxygen therapy, hydration, sometimes just a safe space to rest, they can recover remarkably well. He praised Clara's quick action, noting, "Getting Biscuit out when she did saved his life. But prevention is key. Pet owners should microchip their animals, keep collars on, and have a neighbor or friend who can help in an emergency." His words were a call to action, grounded in the reality of Clara and Biscuit's experience. The footage shifted back to Biscuit, now at the borrowed apartment, chasing a small ball across the living room. His movements were slower than before, his energy tempered by recovery, but his spirit was unmistakable. Clara laughed, a sound bright with hope, as she tossed the ball again. "He's still my little clown," she said, her voice warm. The camera caught the joy in Biscuit's eyes, the way his wrinkled face seemed to smile, a stark contrast to the terror of that fiery night. This was resilience in action, not just surviving, but finding a way to live again, to rediscover joy in the face of loss. Clara's reflection on fire safety took on a personal urgency. "I didn't realize how fast a fire can spread," she admitted in the interview, her hands folding tightly in her lap. "1 minute, everything's fine, and the next, your whole world's on fire. I want people to learn from this. Check your alarms, know your exits, practice with your pets. It's not just about saving stuff, it's about saving who you love." Her voice broke slightly, but she pressed on, her message clear. Preparation could mean the difference between life and loss. The narrative wove these elements together: Biscuit's recovery, Clara's heartfelt reflections, the expert's practical advice, into a powerful lesson. The fire had taken Clara's home, her possessions, her sense of security, but it couldn't take her spirit or her bond with Biscuit. Their story became a beacon for others, a reminder that resilience isn't just about enduring hardship, but about learning from it, growing stronger, and sharing that strength. The footage of Biscuit, now resting comfortably on Clara's lap, his snores a quiet testament to survival, underscored this truth. Clara's hand rested on his back, her touch a silent vow. They would rebuild together. Weeks had passed since the fire that nearly claimed Clara and Biscuit's lives, and though the scars of that night lingered, a new chapter was unfolding. The borrowed apartment on Maple Street, with its mismatched furniture and bare walls, had become a sanctuary of healing. Heartwarming footage captured the essence of this transformation. Biscuit, the French Bulldog, whose courage had matched his, owners waddled across the living room, his black fur gleaming under the soft glow of a lamp. His bat-like ears perked as he chased a squeaky toy, his stubby tail wagging with unbridled joy. Clara sat cross-legged on the floor, laughing as Biscuit pounced, his snorts and playful growls filling the air. The camera lingered on their connection, Clara's gentle hand scratching behind Biscuit's ears, his soulful eyes gazing up at her with unwavering trust. This was no ordinary moment. It was a celebration of survival, a testament to the love that had carried them through the flames. The scene radiated warmth, a stark contrast to the cold devastation of the fire. Clara's face, once etched with fear and exhaustion, now glowed with quiet contentment. Her bandaged hands had healed, though faint scars remained, a map of her heroism. Biscuit, too, had recovered, his cough gone, his energy restored. The footage captured small, intimate details. Biscuit curling up in Clara's lap as she read a book, his head resting against her knee. Clara sneaking him a tiny piece of her breakfast toast, his delighted snuffle drawing a grin from her. These moments were the heartbeat of their story, proof that love could rebuild what fire had destroyed. The apartment, though temporary, was filled with their presence. Biscuit's favorite blanket draped over the couch, Clara's sketches of him pinned to the fridge. It was a home, not because of its walls, but because of the bond that thrived within them. This love was more than sentiment. It was a force, fierce and unyielding. The narrative voice would swell here, rich with emotion. In the ashes of loss, Clara and Biscuit found something unbreakable, a love that defied fire, fear, and uncertainty. Their story is a reminder that the heart's strength can light the darkest paths. The footage would cut to a montage of their daily life. Clara walking Biscuit through the neighborhood, his short legs trotting proudly, neighbors waving, some stopping to pet Biscuit, their smiles a nod to the story that had touched the community. One clip showed a child from across the street, the same girl who'd called Clara brave, tossing a ball for Biscuit in the park, her laughter mingling with his excited barks. These images wove a tapestry of connection, showing how Clara and Biscuit's love rippled outward, inspiring those around them. Clara's own words, shared in a final interview, brought depth to this message. Seated on the apartment's small balcony with Biscuit dozing at her feet, she spoke with a clarity born of reflection. "That night changed everything," she said, her voice steady but laced with emotion. "I lost my home, my things, but I didn't lose what matters most. Biscuit's my family, my best friend. He's the reason I kept going, the reason I'm still here." She paused, her hand resting on Biscuit's back, his gentle snores a quiet counterpoint. "Love like that, it's what makes life worth living. It's what pulls you through when everything else falls apart." Her words were a beacon, a call to cherish the bonds that define us, whether with a pet, a partner, or a friend. The narrative shifted to a broader message of hope, urging viewers to stay vigilant against the threat of fire. The footage transitioned to a fire safety expert, standing before a community center where a workshop was underway. "Clara and Biscuit's story is a wake-up call," she said, her tone urgent but warm. "Fires are unpredictable, but preparation isn't. Check your smoke alarms monthly, map out escape routes, include your pets in your plans. These steps save lives." The camera panned to attendees, families, pet owners, even a few firefighters, nodding as they took notes. A close-up showed a handout with tips: keep leashes by the door, practice evacuation drills, ensure pets are microchipped. The expert's voice carried a hopeful note: we can't prevent every fire, but we can protect what we love most. This message was paired with a call to action, galvanizing viewers to make a difference. The screen displayed a website for a local fire safety organization, its logo bright against a backdrop of Clara and Biscuit's reunion photo. The narrator's voice returned, calm but compelling. "You can help prevent tragedies like Clara's. Donate to fire safety organizations that provide free smoke alarms and education. Support animal shelters that care for pets displaced by disasters." The footage showed a shelter where volunteers fed and played with dogs and cats, their wagging tails and purring a mirror of Biscuit's resilience. A donation link flashed, alongside a hashtag Biscuit's Bravery, encouraging viewers to share their own stories of pet love and safety. The final scenes returned to Clara and Biscuit, their bond, the story's heart. Picture them in a park at sunset, the sky awash in gold and pink. Clara tossed a ball and Biscuit bounded after it, his rolls of skin jiggling, his joy infectious. Clara's laughter rang out, free and unburdened, a sound that carried the weight of their journey. The camera pulled back, framing them against the horizon, two figures united by love, their silhouettes a symbol of hope. The narrator's closing. Words were simple but profound. Clara and Biscuit remind us that love is our greatest strength. It's the courage to act, the will to rebuild, the promise to protect. Let their story inspire you to hold your loved ones close and to keep them safe. This was the power of love, not just a feeling but a force that had carried Clara through fire, that had healed Biscuit's wounds, that had rallied a community and sparked a movement. Their story was a clarion call, a reminder that vigilance and compassion could prevent heartbreak, that every pet deserved a hero like Clara, every home a plan to protect its heart. As the screen faded to black, with Biscuit's playful snort lingering in the audio, the message was clear. Love, in all its fierce and tender forms, was the light that no fire could extinguish.